Hi Bookish Besties, my name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're already subscribed, as always, I appreciate your continued support. Thank you for returning to another video. Today, it is time to do my February Book of the Month predictions. It is already time to do the next round of Book of the Month predictions, which is absolutely wild to me. I can already tell that 2025 is going to fly by within the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, February has turned out to be one of those weird months where it's not necessarily a super slow publishing month, although I wouldn't necessarily say there are a ton of big releases coming out in February, but there are not necessarily a lot of book releases coming out in February that I think are going to be on Book of the Month's radar, but I definitely do have a handful of options that I think could be featured on Book of the Month, either as their monthly curated selections or as their add-on selections. So we are going to go ahead and just jump right in. And I will also give a quick caveat here that we, as per usual, are joined by Sir Archibald. He is currently in my window behind the blind. So if you hear a lot of rattling around and stuff, that is him. And if he chooses to be a consistent pain in the butt, he will be promptly exiled from this room. But for now, he is quiet and calm behind the window, so we are going to leave him be. As per usual, we are going to start with the mystery thriller horror category, and I only have a couple of predictions for this category. There weren't very many noticeable releases in this category for the month of February. But the first one that I have here is a book called You Are Fatally Invited by Andy Pliego. When renowned anonymous author J.R. Allister hires former aspiring writer Mila Del Angel to host a writing retreat at his private manor off the coast of Maine, she jumps at the chance, particularly since she has an axe to grind with one of the invitees. Guest list: 6 thriller authors, all masters of deceit, misdirection, and mayhem. Allister and Mila have masterminded a week of games, trope-fueled riddles, and maybe a jump scare or two. The perfect cover for Mila to plot a murder of her own. But when a guest turns up dead and it's not the murder she planned, Mila finds herself trapped in a different narrative altogether. With the storm isolating the island and the body count rising, Mila must outwit a killer who knows literally every trick in the book. So this one caught my attention because it literally has so many common popular mystery tropes and things that Book of the Month likes to feature. First of all, we have a book that is centered around writers. We have a bunch of thriller authors who are going to this island. There's going to be a private retreat. They featured many books like this before. It's definitely going to have that isolated setting. It's going to be a locked room mystery. And so this is one that I certainly think is a very high contender. I'm interested to see what Andy is going to be able to do with this story because, like I said, a lot of these are very common mystery tropes, and I want to see how she is able to make this book her own. So this is definitely one that's on my radar, and I think it could potentially be on Book of the Month's radar as well. Next, we have a repeat author, and that is Gillian McAllister. I very much enjoyed Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister, and they featured Gillian McAllister's last release, Just Another Missing Person, on Book of the Month, so I have no doubt that they would consider featuring her again. And I am very, very intrigued by the synopsis of this one. This says, it is June 21st, the longest day of the year, and new mother Camilla's life is about to change forever. After months of maternity leave, she will drop off her infant daughter off at daycare for the first time and return to her job as a literary agent. But when she awakes, her husband Luke isn't there, and in his place is a cryptic note. Then it starts. Breaking news. There's a hostage situation developing in London. The police arrive and tell her Luke is involved, but he isn't a hostage. Her husband, doting father and eternal optimist, is the gunman. What she does next is crucial because only she knows what the note he left behind that morning says. This is kind of giving me The Last Thing He Told Me vibes from Laura Dave. Now, I didn't necessarily love that book. I found it to be very anticlimactic overall, but I trust Gillian McAllister and I think that she's going to do this very well. So we have a woman who wakes up, her husband is not by her side, and all that's left is a note, and only she knows what that note says. So I am instantly intrigued. I will absolutely be picking this up if it is featured on Book of the Month, and I really, really hope that it is. And then the very final prediction that I have for this category is a book called A Girl Like Us by Anna Sophia McLaughlin. It says, it's 2004 and former reality TV star and party girl Maya Miller has just married the most eligible bachelor on the planet, Colin Sterling, of the globally famous Sterling family, whose history of aristocratic titles and land holdings rival a British royal, and whose media empire is comparable to the Murdochs. To some, Maya represents the American dream, to others, a gold digger. But when Colin's cousin Ariana, the heiress to the family's immense fortune, is found murdered, Maya is thrust into the spotlight, first as she is revealed to be the next heiress to the fortune, and then as the prime suspect. Swiftly, the entire Sterling family goes into lockdown at Silver House, the family's ancestral estate in the English countryside. They're told it's for their own safety, but Maya becomes convinced that it's not to keep threats out, but to keep secrets in. Now she has no choice but to find and expose the truth hidden within the Sterling family, and why Ariana, a girl she had never met, chose her to take her place. But Maya has secrets of her own, and she knows that in order to survive the Sterlings, she'll have to beat them at their own game. So this blurb says that it's succession Succession meets Saltburn. And I've never watched either of those two things, so I can't really get the comparison, but if you are fans of those, you might want to be on the lookout for this. This definitely has, again, very specific tropes that Book of the Month is not afraid to feature. You have wealthy people behaving badly. This is going to be another locked room thriller. There's going to be unchecked power and secrets being revealed and all of that stuff. So that is why this really got put on my radar. I am intrigued. I don't know if I'm intrigued enough to pick it up, but I do think that it could potentially be featured on Book of the Month. Going into the romance category, I actually only have two to mention here, and they are both repeat authors. So the first, of course, is Ali Hazelwood's newest release called Deep End. I'm pretty sure at this point, Book of the Month has essentially featured every single one of Ali Hazelwood's prior releases, including the young adult contemporary romance that she did. So this one, my understanding is correct, is actually a new adult romance. It takes place in college. So even though it is not one of her adult romances, I do think it is a strong contender just because they did feature Ali Hazelwood's YA, and I didn't think that they were going to. I didn't include that in my prediction video when that book was coming out because I didn't think it was going to be on Book of the Month's radar, but it absolutely was. And so that makes me think that this one is certainly going to be there as well. This says Scarlett Vandermeer is swimming upstream. A junior at Stanford and a student athlete who specializes in platform diving, Scarlett prefers to keep her head down, concentrating on getting into med school and on recovering from the injury that almost ended her career. She has no time for relationships. At least that's what she tells herself. Swim captain, world champion, all-around aquatics golden boy, Lucas Blanquist, thrives on discipline. It's how he wins gold medals and breaks records. Complete focus with every stroke. On the surface, Lucas and Scarlett have nothing in common until a well-guarded secret slips out and everything changes. So they start an arrangement. And as the pressure leading to the Olympics heats up, so does their relationship. It was supposed to be just a temporary, mutually satisfying fling, but when staying away from Lucas becomes impossible, Scarlett realizes that her heart might be treading into dangerous water. So again, you have like this maybe potentially fake dating situation, or at least like an unlikely partnership between the two, and they of course are going to fall in love. I have a mixed relationship with Ali Hazelwood. I have really loved some of her books and haven't loved others as much. I didn't read the YA, but I've been told that it is very, very good, and even though I don't typically read YA contemporary, that I should still check it out. So I may. If this one does come featured on Book of the Month, I do think that I would go ahead and snag it just because I have all of Ali Hazelwood's other books in the Book of the Month edition. So I am intrigued by this one, but we're gonna see how it works out. And this next one I'm really not going to talk too terribly much about just because it is the third in a companion series. It is of course Cythe and Sparrow by Bryn Weaver. The first book was Butcher and Blackbird, and I believe the second one was called Leather and Lark. And if I remember correctly, they both have been featured on Book of the Month. So Book of the Month does like to finish its series, although it's not necessarily guaranteed. There have been series that they have not completed in the past, so I wouldn't say that this is a 100% certainty, but I really do hope that since Book of the Month has featured the other two, that they would feature this one as well. So if you are a fan of the series, if you have the other two in the Book of the Month editions, I would definitely keep your eye out for this one. Moving on into the literary / contemporary fiction category, the very first one that I have is a book called A Season of Light by Julie Iromuanya. When 276 schoolgirls are abducted from their school in Nigeria, Fidelis Eweriki, a Florida-based barrister, poet, and former POW of the Nigerian Civil War, begins to go mad, consumed by memories of his younger sister Ugochi, who went missing during that conflict. Consumed by survivor's guilt and fearful that the same fate awaits Amara, his 16-year-old daughter, who bears an uncanny resemblance to Ugochi, Fidelis locks her in her bedroom, offering no words of explanation, only lovingly, if poorly made, meals and sweets. Amid that singular action, his family spirals into chaos. After unsuccessful attempts to free her daughter from her room, his wife, Adaobi, seeks the counsel of a preacher, praying for spiritual liberation from the curse she is certain has plagued her family since leaving Nigeria. 14-year-old Chuck, beset by his own war with the neighborhood boys, receives a painful education on force, masculinity, and his tenuous position within his family, and rebellious, resentful Amara is hungry for her life to be hers. So the moment she is able to escape her imprisonment, she falls in love, not with the ABBA-born engineer in training her mother envisioned, but with Maxim Caustic, the son of the town drunk. Before long, the two have concocted a plan to run away from the trappings of their familial traumas. Perfect for readers of Sing Unburied Sing, A Season of Light is an all-consuming masterpiece. To peer into the window of the Iweriki family's lives is a gift. So there definitely seems like a lot going on. It seems like we have a father who is suffering a lot of PTSD from his time in Nigeria. Something terrible happened to his sister back when they were still there. He's afraid that something is going to happen to his daughter, even though he no longer lives in Nigeria from what I'm understanding. And so he locks his daughter in her room and she kind of has to escape. She falls in love and it's also going to be kind of like a love story there. So there's certainly a lot to unpack. I'm sure that this is going to talk about Nigerian culture. It's also going to talk about the complications of war and conflict and things like that in these countries. And that definitely sounds like it's going to be a very harrowing, hard-hitting time. And Book of the Month certainly does not shy away from featuring books such as these. So that is why I thought that it would be a perfect contender for this category. The next prediction is actually the newest release from Jojo Moyes called We All Live Here. Jojo Moyes has been featured on Book of the Month in the past, which is what makes me think that she could be featured again in the future. This says, Lila Kennedy has a lot on her plate. A broken marriage, 2 wayward daughters, a house that is falling apart, and an elderly stepfather who seems to have quietly moved in. Her career is in freefall and her love life is complicated. So when her real dad, a man she has barely seen since he ran off to Hollywood 35 years ago, suddenly appears on her doorstep, it feels like the final straw. But it turns out, even the family you thought that you could never forget might have something to teach you about love and what it actually means to be a family. So that really doesn't give me a lot. That's a pretty vague synopsis, but essentially it sounds like it's going to be a family drama full of complicated relationship dynamics. Do with that what you will. If you are a fan of Jojo Moyes, I definitely think you should be on the lookout for this one on Book of the Month in February. Next, I actually have a debut novel. It is called End of August by Paige Deneny. It says 1979, 15-year-old Aurora Taylor's single mother prefers to leave when things get hard. She spent years abandoning bad boyfriends and dead-end jobs without so much as a glance in the rearview mirror. After 15 years in the passenger seat, Aurora needs more than 2 hands to count the towns she's lived in. So when her mother, Lane, shows up at school with the car loaded, Aurora assumes her latest fling has run its course. Instead, it's her grandpa Jay's death, calling them back to the town Lane has spent 15 years running from. Every visit to Monroe, Indiana, ends in an explosive fight. Her mother and her Gran are oil and water, and it doesn't take Aurora long to realize Gran has fallen off the wagon again. Gran drinking and Lane's discomfort in the little blue house, Aurora gives their visit a week, tops. But when Lane begins an affair with the town's married mailman, everything changes. While her mom falls in love with a man she can't have, Aurora has time to fall in love with the town. Her life begins to feel full. She has a friend to call her own, Gran who loves her, and a picture-perfect pastor's son who sees Aurora as more than Lane's daughter. It's everything she has ever let herself dream about. As the summer months march on and her mom's happiness becomes even more dependent on her unstable new relationship, Aurora worries the dreams she allowed herself will end in heartbreak. This isn't just another map dot on their endless journey, and Lane won't just burn a bridge this time. Her choices threaten to light the town on fire, burning Gran's hopes, Aurora's future, and her own chance at redemption to the ground with it. So multi-generational family drama definitely sums this up. It sounds like we have 3 generations of women, all who are very different, all who have deeply affected each other. We have the grandmother who is an alcoholic who doesn't really get on very well with her daughter Lane. Lane seems to have lived a nomadic life, and that has deeply affected her daughter Aurora. So when they have to go back to Lane's hometown because of her father's death, Aurora finally gets to settle in. She gets to build roots, right? She herself is building relationships and friendships, but things of course are very fraught between Lane and her own mother. So that definitely sounds like it could be right up my alley. I am actually getting a lot of Kristen Hanna vibes from this story, especially with the time period in which this is written. So this could certainly be one that I pick up if it is featured on Book of the Month. And this final prediction for this category is another repeat author. It is Diana in Love by Jen Besser and Shauna Festi. This is the second book in the Dirty Diana series, and Dirty Diana was featured not too terribly long ago on Book of the Month, again because they do like to continue with their series. I do have the hope that it is going to be featured there again. So if you did get Dirty Diana, if you did enjoy it, this is one that I would keep an eye out for in February. Moving on into historical fiction, we have Harlem Rap City by Victoria Christopher Murray. And I do believe that this would be a repeat author for Book of the Month. This says, in 1919, a high school teacher from Washington, D.C. arrives in Harlem, excited to realize her lifelong dream. Jessie Redmond Fawcett has been named the literary editor of The Crisis, the first Black woman to hold this position at a preeminent Negro magazine. Jessie is poised to achieve literary greatness, but she holds a secret that jeopardizes it all. W.E.B. Du Bois, the founder of The Crisis, is not only Jessie's boss, he's her lover, and neither his wife nor their 14-year age difference can keep the two apart. Amidst rumors of their tumultuous affair, Jessie is determined to prove herself. She attacks the challenge of discovering young writers with fervor, finding 16-year-old County Cullen, 17-year-old Langston Hughes, and Nella Larson, who becomes one of her best friends. Under Jessie's leadership, The Crisis thrives. Every African-American writer in the country wants their work published there. When her first novel is released to great acclaim, it's clear that Jessie is at the heart of a renaissance in Black music, theater, and the arts. She has shaped a generation of literary legends. As she strives to preserve her legacy, she'll discover the high cost of unparalleled success. So I do believe that this is based on a real person and a real story. It does say that this is the extraordinary story of the woman who ignited the Harlem Renaissance. So that actually sounds really interesting. I am not very familiar with the Harlem Renaissance, the history behind it. This is actually really, really intriguing to me, and I really would like to see it on Book of the Month in February. Also coming out in February, and one that I wouldn't be surprised to see featured on Book of the Month, is a World War II historical fiction called The Riveter by Jack Wang. It's Vancouver, 1942. Josiah Chang arrives in the bustling city ready to make a new life for himself. The Second World War is in full swing, and Josiah, like so many Canadians, wants to prove his loyalty by serving his country. The Chinese Canadians are barred from joining the army out of fear they might expect citizenship in return. So Josiah heads to the shipyard where he finds work as a riveter, fastening together the ribs and steel plates of victory ships. One night, Josiah spots Poppy singing at a Navy club. Despite their different backgrounds, they fall for each other instantly, and soon Josiah is spending his nights at Poppy's small wartime house. Their starry-eyed romance lasts until Poppy's father comes to visit and the harsh reality of their situation is made clear. Determined to prove himself to Poppy, her parents, and the world. Josiah travels to Toronto, where he's finally given the chance to enlist. Josiah rises to the occasion, but is the world changing as fast as his dreams? So I had to let Archie back in because he was scratching at the door. He wanted to go out and now he wanted to come back in, and of course that means the camera is going to shake as he rubs himself against the tripod. Going forward, I'm just not going to say anything. If you shake, just assume that it is Archie. So I think we are all familiar with the fact that there is no shortage of World War II historical fictions, right? It is a very popular subgenre of historical fiction and is one that I personally enjoy as well. But I do think that there are still quite a few stories that can be told, and I think that this is evidence of it, right? Here we have a Chinese Canadian who wants to enlist and he's not being allowed to because of basically his race, right? And so this is going to explore that. This is going to explore what it means to be a Chinese Canadian during the time of World War II. He becomes a riveter in a shipyard and then he is actually able to enlist. And it's also his love story with a singer named Poppy. So I think that this could be very beautiful. I think it could explore some things during World War II that we don't necessarily see too often featured in World War II historical fiction. And this is definitely one that I would love to see featured on Book of the Month for sure. And then the last one that I have for this category is by yet another repeat author. It is a book called People of Means by Nancy Johnson. This is actually a pretty long synopsis, so I'm just going to read some of the blurbs here. It says, from the acclaimed author of The Kindest Lie, a propulsive novel about a mother and daughter, each seeking justice and following their dreams during moments of social reckoning. 1960s Nashville and 1992 Chicago. Perfect for readers of Britt Bennett and Tayari Jones. A memorable story of mothers and daughters, family dynamics, the complicated meaning of success, the pull of love, and the fight for racial equality. People of Means is a timely look at who we are as a nation and who we can become if only we have the courage to follow our hearts. What do you think about that, Archie? Sound good? But yes, because of some of the themes that are going to be explored in this book, I really do think that it could be a top contender for Book of the Month in February. All right, and then the last category that I have here is the sci-fi, fantasy, and magical realism. I only have two to discuss with you here, and I'm only going to mention them briefly just because they are both sequels. So the first book I have is Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is book 2 in the Crimson Moth duology, and I believe the first book, The Heartless Hunter, was featured on Book of the Month. I have heard amazing things about The Heartless Hunter, so much so that I'm very intrigued, and I'm definitely adding that to my TBR. But because I haven't read that yet, I wouldn't pick this up. But I do know a lot of people loved it. A lot of people picked it up on Book of the Month. And so for that reason, I would definitely recommend you looking out for this one in February. And then similarly, we have the follow-up to The Road of Bones by Demi Winters with the sequel Kingdom of Claw. I think this also is a duology. I could be wrong, but it says book 2 of 2. Again, I don't want to say anything about this one just because it is a follow-up. It's a sequel to that first book. But The Road of Bones, again, is another one that I've been hearing really great things about. I do know a lot of people did pick that up in the Book of the Month edition, so be sure to be on the lookout for this one in February as well. All right, everyone, that is it. Those are the books that I think Book of the Month could feature either as main selections or as add-on selections for the month of February. Please comment down below and let me know if you think that there are any additional books that I missed that could be featured. Also, please comment down below and let me know what your thoughts are on Book of the Month. A lot of people in my comments when I do the pick or pass video, they're saying that they have just been skipping Book of the Month constantly, and I cannot relate. I think for the most part, I have really been enjoying a lot of the Book of the Month selection. They typically have at least one book that I want as a main pick, and then that also allows me to go into their add-ons. But from what I've heard, a lot of people are really disappointed in their main selections. They want the add-on selections and they can't get them unless they add a main pick to their box. So I would really be curious. I've heard a lot of people are like switching over to Aardvark, and I have the opposite opinion. Aardvark almost has nothing of interest to me. In fact, I find their selections a little bit too eclectic for my taste. And so I definitely canceled them after only having them for like 3 or 4 months because they just were not for me. So I'm really interested to see if people are finding books that they love over there in comparison to Book of the Month, because I definitely have the opposite opinion. Or if you have made it to the end of this video and you are not feeling chatty, go ahead and leave me a moth or butterfly emoji down in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I typically post 2 videos a week, one on Wednesdays, one on Sundays, and I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos. Or if you would like to connect with me outside of YouTube, you can always find links to my Goodreads, Instagram, and Patreon linked down below along with any books featured in this video. Until next time, y'all, bye.